I literally sat on that beach thinking I'd lost my home, I'd lost my business. Just to keep my head above water, I was funding everything, my whole life on a credit card. Republican terrorist group had planted a bomb in the restaurant and it caused untold damage. So it blew the restaurant apart. The ceiling collapsed. There was a bar upstairs and the entertainment upstairs that collapsed into the restaurant. The damage was unbelievable. But at that point, it was very dark. And actually, in situations like that, people react differently. Some can feel suicidal. Some can give up hope altogether. You know, you got this thing about flight and fight. Yeah. Some people just take off. And I've seen so many people do that. They've had something that's gone wrong in their life. And their answer is, that's it, I'm booking a flight, I'm out of here. You know, and that really shocked me to the core because this was a leader. This is somebody who knew who they were, highly respected. And to take their own life like that, I think was really shocking to me.
355 individuals in the construction industry died by suicide in 2024. That's 4 times more likely than any other industry in the UK.
94% of construction workers actually suffer with stress. 83% go on to suffer with anxiety, whether that be panic attacks, anxiety attacks, so on and so forth. 28% had suicidal thoughts. And as Jake said, that horrific number of people who actually took their own lives due to stress, due to mental health issues last year alone. My name's Chris, I'm the host of the podcast, and today I'm going to be joined by Jake, who is the Managing Director of Evolution Development. And shortly joining us will be Andrew Scott, who's the CEO of 100 different businesses. He's got amazing repertoire. You know, he's somebody who's struggled with depression, hit rock bottom, loads of debt, to now having multiple companies turning 7-8 figures. Welcome to the pilot episode of the Building Minds podcast. Welcome to the pilot episode of the Building Minds podcast. This podcast is brought to you by 2 fantastic partners in Evolution Development and TradePal. This podcast is here to discuss those hard-hitting topics around the construction industry and one of the biggest challenges, which is the mental health crisis.
355 individuals in the construction industry died by suicide in 2024. That's 4 times more likely than any other industry in the UK.
Not just that, 94% of construction workers actually suffer with stress. 83% go on to suffer with anxiety, whether that be panic attacks, anxiety attacks, so on and so forth. 28% had suicidal thoughts. And as Jake said, that horrific number of people who actually took their own lives due to stress, due to mental health issues last year alone. My name's Chris, I'm the host of the podcast, and today I'm going to be joined by Jake, who is the Managing Director of Evolution Development. And shortly joining us will be Andrew Scott, who's the CEO of 100 different businesses. He's got amazing repertoire. You know, he's somebody who's struggled with depression, hit rock bottom, loads of debt, to now having multiple companies turning 7-8 figures. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Obviously, me and Jake have done a little bit of research, but we'd love you to tell the audience, you know, a little bit about you, you know, how it all started, where you are now.
Okay, well, it's a bit of a journey, Chris. So starting way back, I grew up in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and I faced quite a lot of trauma and adversity back in those days. And as a result of that, my mother sent me to England when I was 18. So she bought a one-way ticket, said, "You're out of here, you're gone." And I landed in England when I was 18. Wow. With no money, no real contacts, and literally zero education because I didn't do well at school at all. I didn't attend much school. So landed in England, and I just thought one thing I had to do was work because I needed somewhere to live. I had to pay for that. So I developed a very strong work ethic very early on, and that served me very well in years to come because, you know, it didn't really matter what company I worked for. It didn't matter how smart other people were in the business or well-educated or their connections. I had one philosophy, which was nobody would ever outwork me. So I just worked really hard, built my way up, became quite successful in the corporate world in growing businesses. Mm-hmm. developed a knack for sales and marketing and manufacturing as well. I really enjoyed running factories. And then I got a big break opportunity to join a company that was in desperate condition at the time. It was on the verge of going out of business. Okay. I was able to parachute in and facilitate a business turnaround. That was a building products manufacturing company. We scaled that business from $1 million turnover to 12 million in 3 years, and very profitably. And that business was sold to Masco, which was I think at that time, a $9 billion US Fortune 500 company. So that was a massively successful exit. Unfortunately for me, but as it turns out, looking back now, it's possibly one of the best things that ever happened. I then invested into another struggling business, and I let my ego get the better of me because I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't do enough research in the business, and I had bought a business that was not only struggling, which I knew, but had all sorts of historical problems with the business. And I ended up with a legal case over a dilapidations claim on a building. Okay. And some huge lessons learned from that for later on in my career. And I couldn't save that business. So I ended up in a legal dispute over dilapidations. I couldn't turn it around. And I lost that business, and that set off a chain of events, domino events. And I ended up losing absolutely everything. So 2004, I had the unenviable task of driving down to the beach in Weston-super-Mare where I lived in an old car that I'd bought back from the receivers who had closed down my business. And
famous BMW.
The famous BMW. I literally sat on that beach thinking I'd lost my home, I'd lost my business. Just to keep my head above water, I was funding everything, my whole life on a credit card. And at one point, I think it was about £106,000 in credit card debt just to pay off people and just to maintain where I was. And I sat in that car and I had some very dark thoughts at that point. Not only was a financial ruin, but I had, I was humiliated as well. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. And while I sat there in that car, I had just one thought, which is I've got two young sons who were, I think, something like 11 and 6 at the time. And I just thought, I need to do something for them. I cannot let them repeat that cycle. I cannot see them see me fail. I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to have them be proud of me. So I sat in that car and I thought, I had some very dark thoughts, and I thought, look, I can't allow that to happen. I'm going to have to rebuild. I'm going to have to start all over again. I'm going to have to deal with this debt. I was living at that point then in a tiny little flat. And while I sat on that beach, I literally came up with what I was going to do next, which was a consultancy business. I couldn't obviously afford premises. I couldn't afford to employ anybody. So it had to be something that I could do on my own. And that's what I did. So I set up a consultancy business because despite that failure, I had previously a lot of success. I had built a great corporate. We had exited Cambrian to a US Fortune 500 company. So I decided to lean in on that. And then that launched Perplex, which originally started actually as a consultancy. So I was going into companies in the construction building industry and advising on strategy. And then that grew and evolved over the next few years. Amazing.
I think, you've been through a hell of a lot, and you kind of had a full circle moment there as well, didn't you? And I suppose a question I'll ask you, there's a couple from that we can take, but you mentioned initially that you had a lot of trauma in Belfast.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
When I was 4 years old, Belfast at that time, it was in the middle of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. So there's some serious conflict between religious divides and political divides. And when I was 4 years old, I was out for the day with my brother, Ronnie. And I think he was about 19 at the time. And he was with his partner, and they dragged me along for the day. I was 4, and we'd went out shopping. And in the afternoon, we called into a little cafe, called the Abercorn. Really, really busy. City centre, chock a block on a Saturday afternoon. And we sat there and we had a drink and something to eat. As a young lad, I took my time, and what happened was a Republican terrorist group had planted a bomb in the restaurant, and it exploded as we were sat there, and it caused untold damage. So it blew the restaurant apart. The ceiling collapsed. There was a bar upstairs and entertainment upstairs that collapsed into the restaurant, and the damage was unbelievable. So I think something like 130 people were badly hurt or maimed, lost arms, lost eyes, lost legs. I think 2 or 3 people died on that day as well. So it was pretty horrific. And at 4 years old, all that I remember was being dragged out underneath the rubble being moved, being dragged out, and it was my brother Ronnie who had dragged me out, and I was screaming like crazy. I was 4 years old. I was covered in glass, shrapnel, and they were pulling pieces out of me. He had his eardrum blown out in that incident as well. So, and then the next thing I just remember was waking up in hospital on a bed and looking around and seeing what just seemed like hundreds of people lying in bed, all screaming, blood everywhere. So, so it was quite traumatic. And it took me at least 5 years to recover from that. So some time to recover physically because I got some injuries. But the psychological and the mental damage something like that does is something else, really. So I couldn't sleep. If I closed my eyes, I was straight back there. Yeah. And more than anything, actually, it was the smell that I could remember. Okay. Smell of it, burning rubber, burning flesh, burning, So when I closed my eyes, I was straight back there. And when finally I managed to get to sleep, within a few minutes, I'd be awake with nightmares, just screaming and bouncing off walls.
Horrific.
So, that's it. Yeah. So, so it took me, and as a result of that, I didn't do well at school, really dropped out of school, couldn't function, became very introverted, so I couldn't really engage with other kids. So I think by the time I was a teenager, my mother thought, right, I need to get you out of this country, because we had a number of other similar sort of traumatic events happen to the family. So I think when I was 18, I was on a one-way ticket out of...
Enough was enough sort of thing.
That was enough,
Get you out of there.
Yeah.
Well, that is horrible. What you went through is horrible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
That can't be easy.
Yeah, and lots of people face trauma and different. There's all sorts of different types of trauma. And you feel angry because somebody's done that to you, and and how could somebody do that to innocent? It was mainly families, women and children that were in the restaurant. You think, how could somebody possibly do that to you? So you carry that, the trauma and the experience, and you have triggering events now. So now I've learned to deal with it. It's it's part of who I am, but you learn to deal with it over time. You can't let it define you. You've got to control it and own it.
How often do you think about that day?
It comes up every now and then, and there will be a triggering event, and that triggering event might be something like a smell.
Yeah.
So it might be the smell of burning rubber or something of that sort. It might be visiting a hospital would be another triggering event for me, going into a hospital. So I regularly get some sort of triggering event now, but I have now learnt to compartmentalize that and just saying, right, that was 50 years ago, and it happened. It can't be undone. And so I'm able to view it more objectively now. Okay. But when I think about it, or when I talk about it like now, memories definitely come flooding back.
I think for me, people would sit there and look at you from the outside and think, oh, what a successful man.
Yeah.
But unaware of some of them tragedies that you've faced or gone through to get to this point in your life. And mental health is all about, you can't see it. People look at individuals and think, oh no, you can't be struggling, you're doing so well. But realistically, there's so many people out there who are struggling from day dot of 4 years old, like yourself, going all the way through. And for me, I'm sat here with goosebumps now because I take my hat off to you, like overcoming something like that at such an early age. And then, like you just said, you were in £106,000 worth of credit card debts to start Perplex up. Overcoming that again, and you're still here today. I think, I'll shake your hand on that because I think fair play to you,
I think success is that iceberg. People see that little bit above it, but they don't realize what goes into it underneath and what's underneath. And I think one of the worries for me now is we live in this Instagram age where people see success and they see celebrities and they see the cars and the yachts and the expensive holidays and they think that's how it is. But the reality is, it took me, 30 years to be an overnight success. And that graft that goes into that and that learning and the mistakes, they're what shape a successful business later on.
Yeah. I suppose as well, success is subjective, right? Like people,
absolutely.
What success means to somebody may be very different to another. So if you feel in your eyes what success is, you've got there after 30 years, it doesn't matter whether it took 10 years, 30 years, 50, you got there, which is amazing. So credit to that. So I want to go back a little bit. You get to England.
Yeah.
You've got no money on you, one-way ticket.
Yeah.
How do you leverage that? How do you go about this now? What do you do?
Well, for me, it was actually, I made a decision that I didn't have the money, I didn't have the connections. I had a very poor education because I missed school. But I figured I could do one thing, which is outwork anybody. And I really became obsessed over this. I mean, it's really interesting that I managed to get a flat. It was a converted garage actually, and to studio apartment. And I was able to rent that flat from a lovely old lady called Mrs. Whiston, and her house was magnificent. It was like a stately home, and this apartment was next to it, or this garage was next to it. But I was always very courteous, and I would always go the extra mile. No matter what I did, I would always take time out and go the extra mile. So I became friendly with this old lady. I mean, she was in her 80s. I was 18, but I was very courteous, and I helped her. I've done some gardening for her because she was on her own and things like that. And turned out she owned the house next door to hers as well, which is magnificent, £1 million house.
Wow.
And this was 20 or 30 years ago now. And this house had been rented to a family for 20 odd years previously. They were moving abroad. And Mrs. Whiston just mentioned to me that she would be letting out this house. So I said to her, well, rent it to me. And she just laughed at me and she said, Andrew, the rent is more than you earn every month. So I said, well, drop the rent. and she looked at me and she said, you know what? I will drop the rent because I don't really need the money. I'll drop the rent, but you look after my house, you look after my garden, you look after that house properly. And every Wednesday evening, you promise to come round and have a little whiskey with me and just talk to me for half an hour about life. And
wow.
Right. So I agreed to do that, and I kept that commitment no matter what. And I then, at 18 years old, had the keys to £1 million house. And I then rented out 4 of the other bedrooms for £200 a month each. And my rent to her, at that point, she agreed to rent it to me for £200 a month. So at 18 years old, I was now making more money from property than I was in my job.
Yeah.
Which is insane, absolutely insane. So I discovered this like entrepreneurial flair, and what was that? It was being genuine, being authentic, and caring. Actually, being interested in other people, and interested in finding solutions for other people, and that's all it was. There was nothing clever about it, but being genuine, being interested in her, and she rented this house to me. I rented it for a number of years, actually until I got married. And I made more money from that. And then in my day job, as it were, I figured out that if I just worked harder and longer than everybody else, I would eventually win. And I applied the same principle. So I always did more than I was asked, always. So I joined a glass company when I was 19. A computer, which I didn't know how to use, no idea. I knew a little bit about computers, so I volunteered to be the operator of it. And to do that, to use the software properly, meant I had to learn about the business. So what I did was I came in every Saturday, and I spent the Saturday in the factory. And I learned how to cut glass, how to make double glazing, how to make windows and doors. So I learned that on a Saturday in my own time. And then suddenly, the computer programming all made sense. Everything started to work. And suddenly I became an authority in that business by the time I was 20. And now the MD's looking at me as somebody he needs and trusts. And as a result of that, I got promoted and I gained a very senior position in that business by the time I was 21.
You said something really powerful there. You didn't have an education. You didn't do well at school for obvious reasons.
Yeah. But
you knew you could outwork anybody.
Yeah.
How powerful is that?
It's a superpower. We live in a world now where, unfortunately, there's a sense of entitlement. I'm entitled to the job, I'm entitled to the pay rise, I'm entitled to the promotion, I'm entitled to whatever it might be. And the reality is, in my world, you earn it. So I follow the law of the land, which is you plant the seeds, you water them, you look after them, and eventually you'll get the harvest. But you got to put the work in first. And I think in a society now where I want to go into Tesco's and just have it, here it is. So I'm a big believer of the law of the land, which is you put in the hard graft first. And I'm sure there's other people out there who've got shortcuts and have done some much cleverer things than I have. But I think that's always been my philosophy. So I've always gone the extra mile. In 30 years, I've never put in a overtime claim.
Okay.
I have never, all I've ever done is go the extra mile and everything. And as a result of that, I got promoted and I was pushed and I was invested in as well. So because of my approach, my employers would constantly invest in me and develop me and send me in courses and send me in training because they would always get a payback for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I moved from that company then. I moved from there to another company in Yorkshire, and I progressed really quickly through that company. It was a big building products manufacturer, and then I got headhunted by another company in East Yorkshire. And at 24, I was a director of that company, and by 25, that company became IMF Group PLC, and I was on the board. By the time I was 25, and that was a house building company, building products manufacturing business. And again, all that I did was just drive hard. I was first in the morning, I was last out at night. Saturdays were my learning day, and that was my philosophy.
Self-development.
Yeah, like obsessive levels of personal development. So that was in the market or industry that I was in, but also personal self-development. I was fanatical about mindset.
Did your mindset on that have an effect of like your family and your children, and in terms of them growing up and you putting in all that effort to be able to grow and learn? Did that have an effect?
I mean, this is one of the things that I constantly debate about, which is guilt.
Yeah.
And do you spend quality time with your kids, but you can't provide for them particularly well, and you're always struggling, and then you're stressed because you're struggling, and you can't take them on a holiday, and you can't do the things that you want to do with them because you're struggling financially, but you're there, you're present, you're with them, or do you invest your time to grow and build and become successful, and then be able to do the great things with them? So this is a constant.
It's that. What you just said then is actually hits home a little bit. So my parents had a business in Weston. They had a restaurant, I think they wouldn't hate me saying this. They were definitely not business people. They were people running a business.
Absolutely.
So my dad dedicated every hour of every day in the restaurant. Early mornings, late finishes. As kids at that time, all we wanted was to spend time with our parents.
Yeah.
We had childminders, babysitters and whatever. But every Tuesday, my dad made an effort not to work. He would pick us up from school. He would take us out and spend the day with us.
Yeah.
Years go by. All you remember is that Tuesday afternoon with your dad.
Yeah.
And that was more powerful, I think. It felt more special.
Yeah.
I think you get older, you then realise everything they did was for us.
Yeah.
For their grandchildren and whatever.
Yeah.
And we understand it now. At the time, would we have liked to have our parents around a little bit more? Yes, but we also understand we wouldn't be in the position where we are, whether it be financially or, I suppose, what I've learned from my dad, especially, like, without him doing that. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're feeling, because I'm sure my dad was in that same boat as well. And I think about that all the time now, and I say to myself, I have to make sure what I do for my children is the right thing, whether it be go away and loads of money and then take them out and do the nice things with them, or just spend more time with them and be okay not earning as much. Did you read?
Oh, yeah, fanatically. Yeah.
Because when you were describing, by the way, you read the book, The Compound Effect?
I haven't read that book, actually. I know it, but I haven't read it.
Listen, I'm going to get you a copy.
Yeah, okay, love it.
I will get you a copy. You have to read that book. But what you said about the Saturdays, going in, the compound effect is about the small and sexy things that people don't see behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Compound.
Yeah.
Take you to that next step.
100%.
Take you to that next level.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're dedicating your Saturday. You're saying, I can use that computer. I'm going to learn how to do the double glazing. These things aren't asked of you.
Yes.
They're not sexy things. You can go to the pub and have a pint with your friends. But you choose to do this.
Yeah.
Because you want to do more.
Yeah.
You want to learn more. You want to get to the next step.
I can pretty much predict now. I've employed over 3,000 people. I can pretty much predict which ones are going to go on and do great things and which ones will be where they are in 10 years' time.
Wow.
Actually, I've developed a framework around it called SAM, S-A-M, and it stands for Skills, Attitude, and Momentum. And I created something called Andrew's Millionaire Club. And what I do is I rate people 1 out of 100 on their skill set, and the same on their attitude, and the same on momentum, which is taking action. And on skill, it might be technical skills, competency to do your job, but it might be communication skills, timekeeping skills, attention to detail skills. So a broad brush of skills, not just technical. And then attitude, which is going over and above, always seeing the positive, always finding solutions, going the extra mile, that attitude. And then the last one, momentum, ability to take action. And what I've realized over the years, I've created this formula, which is skills times attitude times momentum equals outcome. So if you're 100 times 100 times 100 is a million. So you're in my millionaires club. And if somebody's scoring like that, I know they're going to become a multi-millionaire, super successful. And not just financially, but in whatever that success looks like. But what's really interesting, if you're a 50, you don't get half the outcome. 50 and 50 is 125,000. So it's almost a tenth of the outcome. Yeah. And what I've realized is, and it's interesting, your point on compounding, a 10% increase in skills, attitude, momentum doesn't give a 10% output increase. It's 20 or 30% increase because it compounds. It's geometry. And that formula I developed 21 years ago, and I apply it to everybody who I meet. And, I assess skill level from top to bottom, technical competency, but all the soft skills, ability to listen, ability to communicate, ability to learn, presentation skills, timekeeping, attitude, going that extra mile, being really interested, positively influence people around you and give ideas, and momentum, ability to take action. And it's really interesting because you can be 100 in skill, technically brilliant. You can have the best attitude in the world, right? I'm 100% here, whatever it takes. But if you don't take action, so 100 times 0 is 0. So you get, if you don't take the action, you don't get any outcome. Correct, yeah. And equally, other way around, you could have the best attitude in the world and unbelievable work ethic and take massive action. And so you mentioned your parents running a restaurant. They could have the best attitude in the world, unbelievable momentum, action, work ethic. But if they haven't got the skill set to run a business, doesn't matter how much attitude you've got, doesn't matter how active you are, or how busy you are. If you haven't got the skill set, it's not going to work either.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think maybe I put them down. Didn't mean to put my parents down, but I'm sure my dad had some business acumen. But probably not enough for him to make that into a franchise and have 50 restaurants or go on to the next thing.
About growth, isn't it?
So one of my mentors is a guy called Michael Gerber, and he wrote a book called The E-Myth, and the E-Myth was the entrepreneur myth. And the myth is, he defines it as a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. So the web designer sets up a web design agency, the car mechanic sets up a garage, the graphic designer sets up a design studio. And actually what they are as technicians, or the hairdresser sets up a hairdressing salon that we would desperately need, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But they're technicians who set up a business, and what they don't realize is there's a world of difference from doing the technical work than there is running a business. And what Michael Gerber says is that the hairdresser should run the car garage, should run the car dealership, because she can't do the technical work, or they can't do the technical work. And so they've got to focus on running the actual business. And it makes complete sense. And one of the reasons most businesses don't grow is because their technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. So the builder sets up a building company, and that's the reasons they don't grow. So, this idea of going to work on your business rather than in your business is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that as well, because we only started as Evolution Developments. We started in June 2024.
Yeah.
So we've been going just over a year now, but we've seen rapid growth in our development already to where we want to get to. We've got 15 who work for us as trades. We've got 4 of us in the office. We've seen rapid growth, and people ask me, how have you got so big so quick? And I just say it's all down to business. Like, if you know how to run a business, you know how to grow a business, develop a business. My focus is on doing that in my company. My focus isn't on doing the work itself. Like, I employ them people to do that work for me.
Yeah.
It's crazy, really, how so many people don't think like that when they go into their own business.
Yeah.
And then I think that leads to, we'll get onto it in a bit, the mental health side of things in the construction, how, a builder, he's got his own business, but he's working on the tools every day, answering phone calls, trying to do quotes as he's hammering, going home to the wife and kids at night and having to write up invoices. It just added stress, added anxiety at times with that. And we'll get into that, I suppose. But
yeah, let's go back, Andrew. I think there's nothing, nobody can take away that you're a very, very hardworking person. You've been very, very successful. You mentioned you had some downtime, some moments which has really affected you. One of them being obviously the debt, the credit card debt, over £100,000.
Yeah.
How do you pull yourself up after that?
So I didn't know it at the time, but I created a purpose. And I would say the number one differentiator between people who become successful in life and those that don't is purpose. So I think so many people, they exist, they work hard, they go home at the end of the week, they're exhausted, they've worked hard, but they're not clear on where they're going. When you have purpose, absolute purpose on what you want to achieve, what it looks like when it's finished, and that isn't necessarily a financial instrument. For me, it wasn't financial, is that I wanted to get back to my feet and I wanted to build, because I wanted my kids to be proud of me. I wanted my kids to look at me and say, look, Dad's gone from rock bottom and look at what he's done. He's created something of value. So for me, my purpose started off as, initially it was, I wanted to rebuild something of value that would make me proud and that could stand tall again. That purpose then evolved into a mission to help other entrepreneurs succeed. Because, I had one failure, but I'd had a huge amount of success previously. And I then became really passionate about helping other business owners grow their business and develop. And what I realized on that journey is most of them knew the technical skills to do what they were doing, but they didn't necessarily know how to run a business successfully. And they most often didn't know how to grow a business and the steps required to grow a business. So that became my absolute purpose, which was to help other entrepreneurs succeed in a massive scale. And that became my absolute passion and my purpose.
Do you think you have to go through a situation like that to find a purpose, or do you think people just actively have a purpose?
Does it change the purpose?
Yeah,
it does change, and I think it's really important to understand this, which is sometimes when you set up a business, you've got a purpose.
Sure.
I'm going in this direction. This is where I want to get to. But then the business evolves and changes and maybe pivots in slightly different directions. And you end up losing track of what that purpose is. And quite often businesses can exist in this state of neither growing or declining, and they're just existing. And part of that reason is the owner of the business has lost that purpose. So I would say more than anything, get a purpose. Be very clear on what the outcome is. You're not creating a job here. You're not just running a business. You really want that business to matter. You want to have an impact.
Sure.
And when you understand what your purpose is, I think everything flows from that. And the other thing about that is that it helps you overcome adversity, because if you have got a clear purpose and you have something go wrong, business partner does a run out. I've got several friends now who have been in business with a partner, and that partnership has massively failed because the other partner haven't pulled their weight, or they ran off with the money, or something like that. Or you get a big bad debt and it really damages the business. Mm-hmm. What happens if you haven't got strong enough purpose? You give up.
Yeah.
Because your motivation isn't strong enough, and I think it's really easy to give up.
I completely agree, really, and you do give up because, Chris knows it well, but I try to take my life on 3 occasions,
Right.
Because I felt like I didn't have a purpose here. I didn't really know what to do with my life. Loads of times, from rugby into education, into construction. For over a 4-year period, I tried to take my life 3 times, but it was only up until the 3rd time, really, that I figured my purpose.
Yeah.
And the birth of my son, 6 months after the birth of my son, I tried to take my own life again. And then that was a real big catalyst, really, on what is my purpose.
Yeah.
And the exact same with you, I sat there crying my eyes out up in Cheddar Gorge, thinking, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I want to make my son proud. I want to make my wife proud. What can I do to give back to him, for him to be proud of me?
Yeah.
And then that started my journey then of being a businessman, starting Evolution Developments, coming up with Building Minds, the podcast, really, and sort of my purpose now is directed into my companies, same as sort of how you've just suggested.
Yeah.
Andrew, how was your mental mind frame when you hit that credit card debt? How was you feeling?
I mean, overwhelmed, unbelievable sense of shame, embarrassment, felt complete failure, and at that point, until I had got clarity, I didn't think about taking my own life, in the sense of ending it all, but I came close to that. Definitely came close to that, because I felt worthless, and I felt a complete failure. So, and it was interesting. It was, I don't know how many hours I sat in that car, but it was during that period in that car that I got absolute clarity that I was not going to let my children down, and my purpose was to get them on the right track, get them on the, having a father they could be proud of, and then during that phase, if you like, sat in that car, I literally came up with my new business venture, which became Perplex. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but the name Perplex is actually an acronym, and it stands for Purpose, Plan, Execute, which was the philosophy that I had developed and applied over 20 years, but I hadn't framed it, I hadn't created it. So Perplex actually is an acronym for purpose. And I applied that then to all the companies that I was working with, and helped them find their purpose, helped the owners of those businesses find their purpose, because they're different. The purpose of a business isn't necessarily the same as the owner, and they can be in different tracks. so, that framework started to develop and roll out. But at that point, it was very dark. And actually in situations like that, people react differently. Some, can feel suicidal. Some can give up hope altogether. Some people, you got this thing about flight and fight.
Yeah.
Some people just take off, boom, and I've seen so many people do that. They've had something that's gone wrong in their life, and their answer is, that's it, I'm booking a flight, I'm out of here. And then other people just say, right, I've got to deal with this, I've got to hit it head on. And how you hit it head on is by looking at where you're going and saying, where am I going to be in 5 years' time? What does it look like? I think the really important thing there is self-awareness, is that I think sometimes the reason people are frustrated or not happy with their life is because they haven't got that purpose and they're just not aware of it. So they ask questions like, what's the point of all of this? Why am I doing this? What is all this about? And that, when I hear that, I always know that they haven't got a sense of purpose. Because once you've got a sense of purpose and you know where you're going, then everything else is challenges. But those challenges are coming because life is hard. Life is hard, and to get to where you want to get to means you've got to overcome challenges.
Sure. Absolutely.
So the fight or flight thing is.
This episode of Building Minds is brought to you by TradePal. TradePal is a comprehensive marketing organisation to support those construction companies and ultimately businesses in the wider spectrum. Now, TradePal empowers trade businesses with tailored marketing solutions and essential support services to boost growth and professionalism. Now, if you have any inquiries, please check them out at tradepal.co.uk. Okay, so let me ask you then, in terms of that purpose, you mentioned that you understand that maybe somebody, when they say these things, they don't have purpose. Could it be that they had a purpose, but they've been knocked off track, or they've been too many setbacks have almost made them think, you know what, I'm never gonna, that purpose I'm always gonna have, I just can't see it. Yeah. I can't see me getting there. I can't see me. Do you feel that happens ever?
Yeah. And there has definitely been times in my career and in my business where I have thought, what am I doing? And it's not working, and I start to give up hope. So I think the key to that is to, again, gain absolute clarity. So for me, one of the influences of my life was Dr. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, those 7 habits I literally embedded in everything that I was doing. And one of those is begin with the end in mind. And for me, what I learned during those times as an insatiable learner was that I had to visualize. So, what I wanted to achieve in life was on my fridge. It was on the inside of my front door. It was a post-it note in my car, like a constant reminder of what my purpose was and what my goals were. And once you've got that, you can deal with the bad days. You can deal with stuff going wrong, because it does. Things don't go according to plan. Businesses can suffer through no fault of your own, or through your own self-sabotage, which I've done as well. Things can go wrong in your personal life. There can be tragedy. There can be all sorts of challenges that impact you. But when you are 100% clear on where you're going and why you're doing it, and that's, purpose to me is a combination of outcome, a goal of what I want to achieve, and a why behind it. Why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Once you understand, the why isn't enough, because you need the action to go with it. Okay. And the world is full of people that are I call them why people. You need your why you're doing this, and you need to take that action. So for me, that is purpose, plan, execute, which is the framework that I build. So, you need purpose, then you need to figure out how you're actually going to do it, which is the plan. And then you need to take massive action and relentless action. And it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It doesn't matter what goes wrong. One lesson that I learned in business very early when I bought one of my first companies was a supplier who I'd partnered with said, Andrew, can I give you one piece of advice as somebody who has bought and sold dozens of companies, is the people that are with you at the start of your journey won't be the same people that are with you at the end of the journey. And I remember listening to that and thinking, oh, what a load of rubbish. And when I bought that one of my first companies, I had a management team with me, a sales director, an ops director, installation director, and we were doing this together, top finance guy. Within 2 years, none of them were there. And if I hadn't had that bit of advice at the start, because I remembered it every time, one of these people moved on, I would have really had massive amounts of self-doubt. But as it happened, I was now equipped with this knowledge this was likely to happen, and that got me through.
I suppose that was a little bit of an education lesson there for you, isn't it? I suppose if you look at businesses, you always see people that travel from company to company with fellow leadership teams. But there's always change, and like you said, like with people's purpose, it always changes. So, like in business, there is a level of loyalty, but at the same time, if you start another company or you start another business, that person might not fit what you
Absolutely,
want to do.
yeah. And the other thing is that, as harsh as it sounds, people can be really good up to a level. And the people that can get you to a £1 million business are not the same people that get you to a £10 million business. Right? Exactly. Okay. So understanding that, along that way, a business to me, do you know what business to me is like? It's like Lego. Okay. And I was fanatical about Lego as a child. And what amazed me most is I could take these little building blocks and I could make a car from it. I could take it apart, reassemble it, and it was a dinosaur or it was a spaceship. And what I understood from that at a very young age is that business is just a series of building blocks. You can take it apart and put it together in different ways and you get completely different outcomes. Sure. You can look at 10 businesses in the same market, serving the same customers with the same amount of staff, and yet you can get 10 completely different outcomes in terms of profitability and margins and brand and success. So you got to understand that a business is just a series of building blocks, and it's the way you put them together that makes a difference. And actually, you can change it, move things around.
How many businesses are you associated with now to this day?
So today, I run 7 companies involved in marketing, software, construction, building products, media, publishing, and property. I exited one of my businesses actually just about 2 years ago, which was Business Leader, which was a very high profile media company that I launched in 2012. Up to that point, most of what I was working on was within the built environment. It was in construction, building products, home improvements. And in 2012, I decided to launch a venture outside that industry into an area I knew nothing about, which is media and publishing. But I knew how to run a business. So I put people around me who understood publishing and media. And that business became a huge success over the next 10 years. It became actually the number one publication in media for entrepreneurs across the UK.
I think it's a monthly publication, physical publication.
That's it. So it's print magazine, it's a website, it's e-newsletter. We had something like just over 100,000 subscribers to it. And then on the back of that, we bolted on some very high profile events. So we had the Business Leader Awards, we had the Scale Up Awards in London. So, and these were attended by the cream of the business world, the dragons, the BBC Apprentice winners, government officials, very high profile, millionaires and a few billionaires. And it was through that process that one of those people, a guy called Richard Harbin, who ran a company called HomeServe, he became one of our judges at the awards, and him and I connected and got to know each other. Mm-hmm. He then sold HomeServe for 4.1 billion in 2023, early 2023. And then he approached me not long after and said, look, I want to acquire Business Leader. I love what you're doing with the magazine and the events, and I want to be part of it. Would you sell it to me? I I'm not sure about this, but I'm sure he called me when he was in W.H. Smith's and the magazine was on the shelf.
That's brilliant.
And he was looking at it and he had an idea for what he wanted to do next, and it required him to own a media company. So we finally completed that exit in September 2023.
Wow.
Funny enough, that publication I received every month as part of the company that I was working with previously.
Right.
Worked there for 4 years as a sales leader. And that was one of the things that the owner of the company was like, get your eyes on this every month.
Yeah. And what I discovered from that really was business, you could have 100 diverse industries, but the business principles are all the same, and the pressures of running businesses were all the same. And I was very fortunate through that business to build an incredible black book of very successful entrepreneurs and government officials and leaders, hedge fund billionaires. I mean, it was absolutely insane, our black book. When we throw a dinner in London, the people around the table was just off the scale. So that was fascinating, meeting people like that,
Sure.
And getting to know them, and then realizing actually all they're doing is what I was doing or what other smaller businesses are doing. And the differences were really marginal. It was belief. It was quite often that they just thought bigger, and their belief in themselves and their purpose was stronger. So this really took me down a route and reignited my passion actually for helping other entrepreneurs, because I'd built lots of companies myself. I then worked with this group of super high achievers. I remember when we interviewed, the likes of John Caldwell, the Phones for You billionaire, and just thinking about how humble he was, but he still built this, global business, and becoming friends with the Dragons, Tuka Sullivan and the like, and realizing actually, their challenges in their businesses were exactly the same as I was having and other businesses were having. So that enabled me really then to refine my strategy and my framework around purpose, plan, execute to help any business, because I realized that it didn't matter what the industry was, what the audience was, the challenges were all the same. Stressed out CEOs, worrying all the time, and lots of them dealing with mental health issues.
This episode of Building Minds is brought to you and sponsored by the multi-award-winning construction company Evolution Development Southwest. Evolution Development Southwest are your one-stop shop, whether it be for a garden fence or a 10-story renovation. Please check them out at evolutiondevelopments.co.uk.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really, you've created a community there, haven't you, where you're all working together, you're all suffering or identifying the same issues, so you can work together to overcome them issues. And I think that's really important for people to take back and put into their individual companies about, creating that community within there. But also a community within your industry. Construction, I think, is a very popular industry where you're in it alone at times. For me, I think it's really important that them construction companies, construction leaders, businessmen come together to try and identify and work with some of these issues that are being raised to overcome them as a community effectively. So it's nice to hear that such successful people, from Dragons, apprenticeship winners, billionaires, they're forming communities to do that.
I think it is so important, Jake. I think one of the biggest challenges of a business leader and somebody who runs, whether it's a small business or a big business, is it's really lonely. It's very lonely. And having that peer-to-peer conversations with other business leaders just shares a load and it has a huge therapeutic impact on you. I mean, as a business owner, you can't turn around to your staff and say, I might not be able to pay you on Friday because customer hasn't paid. Because what you then do is create mass panic. So you can't have those conversations, or you can't say, I'm not sure, I don't know the answers, I don't know what to do, because your employees and your team look to you to have the answers. So all of that ends up getting internalized, and that becomes self-doubt, and it becomes stress, and it becomes anxiety. And you can't share it with anybody. So having these peer-to-peer relationships and talking to other business owners and other business leaders and them giving you their input and you giving them your input, I think it is one of the most important things a business owner should do. And the other one, which I didn't used to think about very much, is actually to have a mentor and to have somebody to go to for business advice and to bounce ideas off.
I was quite surprised actually when you said that you had a mentor as well.
Yeah.
Somebody of your stature, what you've achieved, what you've overcome, the businesses you created. When you said that you had your own mentor, I was a bit like, really?
Yeah. No, I think it's so important to have somebody to bounce ideas off and sometimes actually to hold you to account. As well. Look, because one of the challenges of a business owner is they're inherently creative and they can spot opportunities everywhere. It's the nature of an entrepreneur is, I can go in that direction. I can spot an opportunity over there. I can see this over there. We could do that. We could add that in. We can create that. We could launch that business. You end up having a lack of focus on your core business.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really important that and that's back to that purpose and clarity. You have absolute clarity in where you're going. And sometimes having somebody to hold you to account, say, look, you're off track. This is what we said. This is what we agreed. I think it's really important. Right? Yeah.
And everybody's learning. It doesn't matter how successful you are.
Yeah. Nobody has all the answers.
No.
Yeah.
No. And that's the beauty of this game, right? Yeah. And that's why I think books, like anybody I've spoken to have been successful, have multiple books, they all read a lot of books.
Yeah.
They all learn every day.
Absolutely.
They all like to better themselves.
Yeah.
I spoke to people who read 2-3 books a month and they keep a spreadsheet of everything they've taken out of it. They want to implement in their day to day. Or I speak to people who will religiously read the same 5 books over and over again to ensure. But the point is, they're all trying to better themselves.
Yeah.
And also, every business leader I've spoken to have mentors.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, like you said, that accountability is lonely being a business leader. You know, it really, really is.
Yeah.
And having that person there that you can turn to and say, okay, like, this is where we're at. This is what I'm doing. And they say, well, this is what you said you're going to do. Yeah. Why haven't you done this? Or what has stopped you from getting from A to B, or essentially? Yeah. You know, I take my hat off to you. I think it's important. I think it's massive.
I think another thing that is starting to develop is almost mastermind groups, where there is a small number of people that are working together in a small group to support and help each other. I'm seeing that more and more and more.
It's almost like I don't know how to word it. So the previous company I worked at had this. So they weren't necessarily consultants as such. They're all like, I suppose you can call it a leadership team, but didn't work directly in the business. Yeah. Like a thought group, essentially.
Yeah.
And they were there to advise, like advisors, like a team advice. And that was like that little click. Then any business that these two owners went to do, they took that team with them for advice as mentors or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I've seen that. That's a powerful thing. I think it's the way things are going.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's it's interesting to talk about the construction industry. I think because it is the nature of the industry that we are in. A lot of business owners and staff really suffer from mental health, and having those people to bounce off, I think, is super important.
Listen, you've seen the stats, right? We mentioned the stats at the intro of this podcast. Why we're doing this? You mentioned that obviously a lot of your focus has been within the construction industry.
Yeah.
How much have you seen of this crisis, whether it be head on? You know, you've gone out and seen it in the field, people struggling, or you hear reports later. What do you know about the mental health crisis within construction?
What I can tell you is I've lost several friends through taking their own life. And what's really sad is that, I mean, one of them particularly comes to mind who had built a very successful building products manufacturing business. And they've been in business a long time, over 20 years, very successful company. And the CEO, the owner of that business, was very well known and very respected in the industry. Over COVID, they had a series of events which meant the bank put massive amounts of pressure on them on some commercial contracts that they couldn't complete, as I understand it. And the business was forced into administration. And the owner of that business, who that business was everything to him. That was who he was. He really struggled with that, and he took his own life.
Wow.
And that really shocked me to the core, because this was a leader. This is somebody who knew who they were, highly respected, and to take their own life like that, I think was really shocking to me. But I've seen it time and time again. And, for a lot of business owners, their identity ends up becoming their business. It's who they are. Yes, they've got their family at home. Yes, they've got their friends down the pub. Yes, they've got, the rugby or the football. But actually who they are,
judged on their business effectively, aren't they?
I think, I think it's men and women. I think it's probably more so with men, particularly, because women tend to have more balance and other things going on in their life, whereas men end up, their identity becomes, their business becomes who they are.
So much, don't they?
Yeah.
Isolate themselves.
Yeah, and become very, very isolated. Yeah.
I remember Jake actually called me a few weeks ago. There was a client that was holding some money back, and he was getting sick. I said, "Why are you stressed? It's not in your control right now. You've done what you need to do. You put the procedure. Don't let it bother you. Don't let it get you down. Do what you need to do to ensure you've done everything right.
Yeah,
and just let it take its course. I feel like in life, like there's so much added stress from everywhere. Like focus on the things that you can influence, you can change, and try not to. Obviously, it's hard to say try not to worry, but if there's something that you can't enforce or you can't affect, it's not really much you can do about it. Don't get yourself down.
So, no, absolutely. I mean, there are, because I'm quite aware of these situations. I think I've taken the approach that particularly after COVID, because COVID had a huge impact to so many people, and particularly a business like mine, which 100 staff or nearly 100 staff today, and quite a young team.
Sure.
And that young team were very much together. COVID struck, everybody's working from home, and that had a real impact. And I made a decision, which has been criticised extensively, that in our business, everybody's in the office. We don't do work from home.
Yeah.
We don't want people working from home. And, I'm being called archaic. The world's moved on. Everything has changed. But I absolutely know that my team are stronger together, and that relationship and that bonding together and that community that we've created in our business makes us stronger together. If I had my team and they were all working remotely, we wouldn't have the camaraderie that we have. We wouldn't have the support of each other that we have, because everybody's just a screen, and there's no sense of togetherness through that. And people say, well, you can do X, Y, and Z. It's rubbish, absolute rubbish. Get everybody in the office together. I'm very happy when they arrive and have a cup of coffee in the morning and a chat about their weekend, about what they did last night. I'm absolutely fine with that. I encourage it. In our business, we don't just actively pursue this togetherness policy. I mean, we do head massages. If somebody come in and do head, we have yoga.
Are they in today?
We have yoga every Wednesday morning. People come along to that. So we build, and we have lots of regular events. Yeah. We have, summer parties. We have Halloween parties. We have Thursday night drinks. We have this culture where we're not just 100 people transacting. These are
100 people working for Andrew Scott is 100 people working together.
It is. Yeah.
And it's just so powerful, like lots of people go, well, what are you doing in your company for mental health? And for me, it's all about culture, community. We're in it together.
Yeah.
Whether you're a cleaner all the way up to the CEO, everyone's equal and everyone's treated fairly. And I think one of the most powerful things is, you said about Thursday night drinks. If you went out for a Thursday night drink and you were sat there talking to the cleaner or the maintenance man, it's so powerful, because they'll be like, oh my God, Andrew Scott's talking to me. He's the owner of the company. Yeah. Where if you didn't bother, they'd be like, I don't feel appreciated, or part of the community, is it? So it's just so powerful in terms of what you can do there.
It really is. So we had a party a few weeks ago we cleared the car park out the front. We printed a big marquee.
Yeah, we had to come in on the morning.
Did you? Right. Yeah. We had a local business turn up with a food van. We went to Booker's for all the drinks. And during that afternoon and evening, I think 4 different members of staff who wouldn't normally have deep conversations with me had a few drinks, got me in the corner and said, I think we could do this.
Yeah.
I would love an opportunity to do that. Do you know that I can do this? And I'd love to show you what I could do. And that is transformational, really transformational, because I'm now executing on all of those.
Sure.
Yeah. So I've remembered them all, and we're now implementing some of those changes.
And exactly that, isn't it? And that's going back to the business and leadership model. There is you're listening and you're implementing changes that they might not see straight away, but they'll soon see them changes or feel.
And one of the challenges is what you don't want to do as a business is become like cotton wool.
Sure.
Where you mollycoddle everybody and don't be offended, don't be upset. A customer's ringing up, I'm afraid to pick up the phone, or a customer's got a problem, who do we pass it to? You need resilience. If you're going to be successful at anything in this day and age, you need a sense of resilience. So, we don't employ a bunch of babies. We employ, grown adults that have got a responsibility, and they've got key performance indicators, they've got expectations around them. But at the same time, I want to create the best possible environment for them to thrive. And, we've got a very low staff turnover. People do leave, but very rarely. In fact, we had one leave 6 weeks ago who had been with me for 5 years and said, look, it was just time. He had another opportunity. It was time to move on, time to try something new. And I shook hands with him on his way out and said, I'll see you in 6 weeks. But it was actually 2 weeks.
Really?
So after 2 weeks, he rang me up and said, can we go for a drink in the pub after work? we met up over the road, and he said, can I come back?
Grass ain't always greener on the other side, is it? At times.
Do you know what was really interesting? It wasn't the technical work, because that was the same as what he was doing. In the new role, everybody worked remotely.
Right.
And he was sat all day, every day, in his bedroom, looking at a computer screen. And after 2 weeks, he rang me up and he said, I miss my friends. I miss my morning breaks. I miss my going for a walk at lunchtime with the team. I miss the camaraderie and the laughter in the office and people throwing at each other, throwing stuff at each other.
Do you know what? You say that. Like, how many times do you speak to people and they say, my job's all right, but the people are brilliant. It's the people what's making it.
Yes, absolutely.
You then take those people away.
Yeah.
And you're just doing that job that's all right.
Yeah.
Like, with the greatest respect, unless you're a professional athlete or you've worked towards something all your life and you say, this is what I want to do for this reason. Some parts of your work are going to be unsexy. Some part of your work is going to be a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And if you're sat in 4 walls, those same 4 walls with nobody else around you, no human interaction, no nothing, there's only so many Teams calls that you can go on before bashing your head against the wall.
It's just awful. I've been in one this morning, and it's, you don't get, we're trying to screen share, it didn't come up properly, the signal cut out, and suddenly I couldn't hear half the conversation. And you just think, okay, yes, there's definitely a place for it. A 1 hour Teams call versus a 3 hour drive to a meeting and 3 hour drive back.
Sure.
But it's really interesting. In my business, I say to my team, I want to be sat in front of customers, not in front of screens. So we've got 3 or 4 pool cars, and my expectation is my staff get in those pool cars and go and see customers, sit with them, learn about the business, walk around their factories, their showrooms, their offices, and get a feel for the business. And when you do that, you can do a much better job for them.
Yeah, completely agree.
You said you got over 100 staff. Is that across Perplex or across all the 7 businesses?
That's across the businesses. We had 100. I think we had 106, and then when I sold Business Leader, about 20 or 18 went with that business. Sure. So I think we've got about 93 at the minute.
Wow.
And that's as Perplex, and the other business that employs a number of people is Insight Data. Okay. And Insight is a data and software company that actually tracks the construction industry. So that tells us, gives us data on builders, on construction firms, on window and door manufacturers, on architects and specifiers. So we can click a button and say, give me every architect who's working in this type of area in this region, who work in these sizes of projects. Give me a list of them and give me the decision makers in each of those firms.
Yeah.
And then our customers then use that data to communicate with them, send them marketing comms or, invites to CPDs, insights to CPDs, insights, invitations to events, that type of thing. Wow. So that's two businesses that employ, the bulk of our teams. So, and then the other staff and then are spread across our property businesses, property portfolio.
Yeah.
And our own maintenance and construction and contracting business that carries out maintenance and property development.
How do you ensure that the mental well-being of the 94 employees that you have are okay? And obviously we're talking about mental health, mental welfare. How much of that is a focus to you or the team? And what do you do to ensure that there's support there if needed?
So this is a real challenge because no two people have got the same requirement. And the one key element is we don't have a hierarchical management structure. So my door is always open. Anybody can come and see me. And it's the same with all the leadership and management team. I've got an office. I'm never in we're in an open plan office and anybody can come to anybody and discuss their any concerns they have. We have a people and culture person and their role, we used to call it an HR role. I dislike the concept of HR. What we have is a people and culture person and that lady is there to support and assist. We have specially trained mental health officers as well within the business. So in the same way, we've got first aiders that are physical, we've got mental health first aiders as well. So I think we've got 4 of them across the business as well. And then the other element is that community. So one of our team yesterday got some bad news in his personal relationship. Really, really upset. 2 members of the team then just said, right, look, we're taking them out. Said, yeah, go. So, 3:00 yesterday afternoon, they're gone, they're out of there. And, they're going to spend the afternoon together, go for a few drinks, go for something to eat and just support them. So that's like a no-brainer to me. Go.
Brilliant.
So I think that's, we don't get it right all the time.
Sure.
And sometimes it can be challenging because there's a lot of conversations around mental health now. And we've got to be really careful about what is real mental health, and what is just a lack of resilience. There's a difference between somebody who's really suffering with mental health and somebody that is just uncomfortable picking up the phone to a customer and gets anxiety.
Sure.
So you've got to get that balance right as well, because mental health is becoming a epidemic situation now in the UK, and we've got to be careful that we don't mix it up.
Absolutely, and the figures state that currently, obviously, construction being the number 1 industry for suicide rates. 355 people in 2024 committed suicide in construction. They're 4 times more likely than any other industry. So for us, it's a big purpose on putting it on that. But nationally, across all industries, it's quite a big topic as well. And I think what we're going to do over the time is speak to other people in different industries to see what's going on there. How do they implement mental health support? What's their cultures like in their businesses? To see if we can come together to improve that crisis that's currently happening in the construction industry, really.
Yeah, and it is a crisis because the numbers are terrifying in comparison to other industries and other sectors. And I wonder why that is. I mean, I guess there's some evidence which is pointing to certain elements, but
my biggest worry at times is, everyone goes on about health and safety in construction, but nobody raises the question about mental health in when you're doing a job. And we all know that mental health you can't see. So if somebody's cutting something with an angle grinder, what's stopping them from cutting their wrists or, taking their life? what support is there to try and limit that possibility of that happening? Do we need to bring in like toolkits for it, like that go in your health and safety boxes? You know, at Evolution, we put in methods to deal with sort of anxiety, panic attacks, like when I'm on sites and stuff. Lots of elements like that. So for me, it's crazy. Like what we just said, the stats, you know, 4 times more likely to take your own life if you work in construction. Yet the government are asking us to build more homes, build more schools, added pressure, funding's not there.
And comply with more and more legislation and paperwork and...
Absolutely. You know, cost of living's gone up. People don't want to spend money on their homes as much anymore. So, you know, you got to keep your prices sweet when you're in the construction industry to get the business. It's just all them added pressures that are implementing it, isn't it? And
margins are being squeezed.
Absolutely.
Cash flow's always a challenge because customers don't pay when they're supposed to pay.
Absolutely.
You know, it's crazy. You know, you go into Asda, you buy something, you pay for it there and then. You know, you don't walk out and say, you know, I'll pay you in 6 weeks' time.
Exactly that. And like with the construction industry, it's such a, you know, when Perplex shuts at 5 o'clock, nobody's there after 5 o'clock to answer the phones. So everybody waits. But in the construction industry, you know, you have people, customers, clients ringing you at 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, 6 in the morning. And it's like you're expected to answer it. You know, and my argument is we finish at 5 o'clock. You know, if we get back to you, we get back to you. If we don't, wait until the next day.
I mean that actually is a really good point because this is something I'm looking at now because Perplex is quite unique as a marketing agency. Now because we, you know, our account managers that look after our clients do work really long hours and they're using their own mobile phones. And I think I want to really address that and saying, look, actually, you know, here is company mobiles or access to company device. And, you know, you should be switching that off at 6 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever.
Do you know what? I think it's so easy nowadays, especially with modern phones. Phones can have eSIMs and stuff like that. Companies can subscribe to eSIM services, you know, and that automatically cut off at 5 o'clock. So you haven't nowadays got to go and buy other handsets or anything like that. You can just set them up with an eSIM for the company and they have that separation between their personal life and their work life. A question I have for you, and I'm going to hope that people ask you this often, maybe they don't, but we've just mentioned 7 businesses, 90 odd people. How are you?
You know, the truth is most entrepreneurs live their life with a mild level of anxiety. Because no matter how much money I've got in the bank, no matter how successful I am, I can't help but think about what if it went wrong. I can't help to think, you know, what if we've had a fallout with that customer. I can't help to think, what are our competitors doing? And I think so. For me now, I use that as a tool because I'm aware of it. But you know, I've spent the last 20 years in a sense of mild anxiety. You know, waking up in the morning thinking, you know, God, you know, what is today going to bring? Or you know, worrying about a meeting, or you know, I'm seeing the bank manager, or you know, our current debtor book is suddenly jumped up massively. So the truth is, I don't think I've ever met anybody, there must be out there, I'm sure, but I don't think I've ever met any entrepreneur who runs a business that doesn't have some level of anxiety, even if they're doing really well. And if they are, I would love to know what their secret is.
Exactly.
And I think, my friend recently sold a business and I was with him last Friday. We went out to celebrate. We went into Clifton. We had a fabulous afternoon out, a few drinks, early evening. We were talking about this and the sense of relief now. He said, Andrew, I had no idea. He said, because I've ran this business for 15 years and I've had 15 years of mild to extreme anxiety and anywhere in between the two of them. And he said, even when things were going well, you know, I still had this level of mild anxiety. Now that I've sold it, the relief is unbelievable. And, you know, And I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that he broke down and cried his eyes out when the deal went through and he completed. He said, in this massive sense of responsibility, employing all these people, having all these customers, having all this overhead and rents to pay and VAT to pay and all this responsibility that I've always had on my shoulders now for all these years. And it's just gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. And he doesn't need to worry about it.
Yeah. Do you know, my father was exactly the same. Like, it's a little bit different. My father still owns his business. He rents it out. He has a tenant and whatever.
Yeah.
But that moment where he realised he didn't have to be there every day, he hasn't got to worry about it. He's just got to make sure they pay their rent.
Yeah.
For him, that was like, okay, I've got some time to enjoy life now. You know, if I want to play golf on a Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to play golf on a Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. So I completely understand. I suppose it's really, really important that when somebody does hand their business, if they're used to that structure, to have some form of structure going forward.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people that you see, they get rid of a business and they say, okay, we're going to unwind now. We're going to have downtime. They go on their 3 or 4 holidays that they really love. But then they need that sense of purpose going forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, so you do. I mean, that doesn't need to be going back into business.
No.
Although it can be, you know. So my friend, for example, he sold his business. He's got another business, which is almost his passion project.
Sure.
And his passion business. And he doesn't care how much money it makes or doesn't make. It's really a passion project for him. So he's now going to go all in on that. And I think that's brilliant. I do think, going back to the purpose element and relating that to this conversation, one of the key strategies that every business owner should have is that, what does it look like when it's done? Because I want to build a business that I can eventually exit. Because if you don't exit, it's a weight around your neck for the rest of your life. And nobody wants that. So the idea of building a business, and it's not that you do exit it, but you build a business with the strategy that you can exit it. And that is a plan. You actually create your purpose. I want to build this business up to 5 million or 10 million or serving these customers in these countries.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to exit it. So because that gives you that safety valve that you can do that, you know, and if it's time and you're exhausted and you just want something new or try something different, you've now got that ability to do that. Or you've got the choice then, no, I'm enjoying it, I'm going to carry on doing it. But you've got the choice and you're now in control of that choice. What you don't want to do is build a business where the business controls you and you're now beholden to this business for as long as you can see in the future, because that is not a place where you want to be.
I'll ask you a couple of light-hearted questions, but I suppose if you had to if you're looking in a mirror and you can see a young Andrew, right,
still is
a younger Andrew, should I say? You know, before professional career at school, just moved. What are you telling yourself? What one nugget would you give yourself back then?
It is this: stop worrying. It probably won't happen. Because I spent my life worrying about, what if this happens? What if the customer doesn't land? What if the customer doesn't pay? What if my number 2 employee that I now depend on leaves? What if, you know, so many what ifs, and those what ifs. What if it doesn't work? You know, I'm launching this thing, you know, I'm currently launching a brand new business as if what we've got isn't enough. People are saying, what the hell are you doing going back into business and launching a new venture for? And I'm saying the answer is because I haven't even got started yet. I still bounce out of bed in the morning. I love what I do passionately. And it's my, you know, I love it. I'm excited to go to work every day. And I haven't even got started yet. So I'm launching a new venture, TradePal. And I'm super excited to go again and to build something from scratch again and create something from new that will add a lot of value to the construction industry.
Andrew, thank you so much for the information you've given. I suppose it's important to mention TradePal and where this loops into all of this.
Yeah.
You mentioned, obviously, this is a new venture for you. Obviously, we've got Jake here from Evolution Developments and TradePal, Andrew yourself. We've come together to build this fantastic podcast.
Yeah.
The studio is obviously amazing that you guys have built, so thank you for obviously allowing us to use this. But do you mind telling us a little bit about TradePal for people who don't already know?
Sure. Well, over the years for Perplex, we obviously provide marketing services for the construction industry, but they tend to be bigger companies. And what we realized is that a lot of trades businesses, companies maybe under 3 million turnover, are owner-managed businesses. And, as we discussed earlier, it's really hard to run a business where you're on site, you're doing the paperwork, you're pitching new clients, you're doing quotes, you're doing proposals, you're dealing with the VAT, you're dealing with payroll and your CIS. It's hard doing all of that. So one of the things we realized is that trades businesses do much better if that element of it around the marketing side of it was taken away from them and was done professionally.
Sure.
So I think what I believe that trades businesses need is visibility, where they're seen and recognized, and credibility, where they are trusted. Yeah. So if you get visibility, you get credibility, you can grow a business. So I developed Trade Pal around those two pillars, which is we want to give businesses visibility via website, social media, online search, and we wanted to give credibility in terms of reputational congruency, so reviews, that type of thing. So we built Trade Pal really with this view that, look, you concentrate on running your business, we'll take care of making sure customers find you, they trust you, and they want to buy from you at the right prices because they trust what you're doing. So that was really the whole concept around Trade Pal. And as we've built this out, as we've developed it, we realized, there are so many construction and trades businesses out there, and we're having conversations with them, and this issue around mental health has come up time and time again. When we came across Jake, and you shared your thoughts and concerns about the construction industry mental health, we just thought, look, there's an absolute partnership with what you're doing with your business, because in your construction company, you're an absolute advocate for
100%
for mental health. So, and I felt that some of what Jake was doing, or a lot of what Jake was doing in his own business, I think was really relevant and important to all trades businesses, all construction businesses. So I think, finding that opportunity to partner together to encourage all of these businesses. Construction industry is still a very male-dominated industry.
Sure.
And, and you're out on site, it's heavy work, and, a lot of those men don't want to share their feelings, don't want to, they are insular, they don't want to share that. So bringing that to light and saying, actually, it's okay to talk, it's okay to share this sort of information, I think is really important.
What you do at Trade Pal then really helps alleviate stress. Take some stress away from business owners for them to focus on what they want, what they should be doing, really.
Yeah.
So for me, there's a massive link there, right?
Yeah. I think it's not, we're starting off with the requirements trades businesses have the most, which is, can you please supply a steady flow of good clients that are prepared to pay our prices and trust us to do the job. We want to really evolve it more as a network and as a community, back to what we discussed right at the very beginning. I don't want to just build their website. I want to build a community. So over the next couple of years, that's exactly what we want to do. So we'll host Trade Pal events where we'll bring trades businesses together. We'll talk about things like mental health. We'll talk about all of these elements that are important. One of the things I'm keen to do is to run some training workshops. How to price properly, how to run a trades business where you can be profitable and successful, and start to remove some of this stress from it as well. So that's our vision for Trade Pal, really, is to build a community.
Well, I suppose it could be that the two of you could work together to help build, I suppose, a plan or a playbook, essentially, for these things. Maybe you implement it in an evolution, and then when you go to rolling it out, you already have a proven record of what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea, and I think that's the direction that we're heading in.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully, going to chat with Andrew after this as well about sort of business and things like that, and see how we can form to go forward together, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Andrew, is there anything you want to add? You want to say anything about any of the businesses or anything you got upcoming? Now's the time.
So all I would say is, look, the construction industry has got its challenges. Some of the stats that you've presented today were, really alarming. And I think both from the owners of construction companies and and the contractors and the people that work there as well. I think that, mental health is a real issue, and people need to stop hiding from it and actually bring it right in front of them, discuss it, and share how they feel, and I actually have conversations with other people and learn about it.
Thank you ever so much, Andrew, for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Obviously, our first pilot episode here from Building Minds. Yes. I think it's going to be a successful one, and hopefully we can build on going forward. But thank you ever so much for coming in, sharing your stories and your ambitions and purpose.
My absolute pleasure, and really looking forward to seeing both your business, your construction business, and your mission and your purpose around supporting mental health. I think so I want to wish the podcast all the very best for the future.
Thank you so much. And don't forget, guys, you can follow us on all social media. So Building Minds Podcast on Instagram, on X, on TikTok, YouTube, and then anywhere else, really. Just Google us, Building Minds Podcast. You'll find us, come up. And if you've got any inquiries, please contact us at buildingmindspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know if there's anybody specific you'd like us to get on the show, or if you have any feedback that you want to give us, it'd be really, really appreciated. In the next episode of the podcast, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the mind of Jake, the suffers and struggles that he's had with mental health specifically, but also the challenges he's had from creating his own business. But again, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And hopefully this continues a great relationship.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.